Alright, multimedia, here I am at the tail end of my little winter vacation, and I wanted to make sure I made this video before we went back to class on Monday, which is two days hence. So this is a prototype of the game you'll be making, and it's a little bit bigger than what we can see there, but it's still cool. So I'm going to click to continue. So this is how it should work. We have a title screen, Ozone Defender, Save the World. Yours should be different. Don't copy my game, make your own. Yours will be way cooler. So there's a button here that says click to continue. And there's the mission, here's the story, stuff, yours, the archopods are going to kill us all, Space Force, Last Defense, do your best, Space Cadet, bam. And now, this part still needs some artwork in it, but basically it says, this is how we play the game. Use the arrow keys to control the movement, use the space profile missiles, shoot the invaders, but don't shoot your own guys. So I might have some guys that look just like my player character, flying through the screen just for fun to see what happens. And you either shoot them or you don't. Hopefully you don't. So you may improve your capabilities by catching power boosting objects. So we're all prepared for the game, and over on the left you'll see where the scoreboard's going to go, and you can put your scoreboard wherever you want. If you don't want your movement to go top to bottom, you want to go right to left, or whichever direction you want to go, you can do that. Now this one does not have collisions yet, but it does have shooting. Collisions don't work. Shooting works, but doesn't hit anything. So we're still getting there. But and we're still going to add in some stuff over here for the scoreboard. You'll be able to see how many lives you have left. You'll see how many hits you have. You might see what power boosting objects you might have and stuff like that. So there's a few other things that we're going to add in here as we go, like some background stuff, or maybe put the curve of a planet that we're sitting over here. And notice that this stops as we get to that side over there. So there's math we need to figure out for making it work. So let's take a look at what we need to have in here to make it work. So there's a section over here in the library. There's a few objects that are like, what is that? Now button blinky, if we play this, does it play? Does it play? I don't think it does. But button blinky is part of the works that makes part of the button work. So if you check out the game again, the button, when you point to it, does this sort of fade in, fade out, sort of hypnotic. And so what's in here? We need to have for sure your player piece. Now your player piece, if we check out the size of this thing, is, let's see, properties. This thing is 59 by 56, so you don't want to have it too much bigger than that. About 60 pixels square is about the biggest you want this to be, and that's important to know how big it should be. Don't make your pieces too big. It makes the game kind of weird and awkward. There is a thing called splash. Now splash is pretty important. What splash does, splash tells us, put this down here, splash tells us what's in the game. So I play through this, and this has a bunch of frames. It has a piece on the bottom. Let's just shut everything off. The piece on the bottom is our background for the splash. So let me zoom out on that. Let's see, I can do this. There we go. So the background object on the splash is simply, let me zoom out some more, I think. There we go. So the background object for the splash is just this. And I did some color coordination to make it work properly by using Peloton, the color scheme designer. So Peloton looks like this, sort of. And I made a color scheme in there that I thought worked well. And I didn't concern myself too much with my background, but these are the objects I wanted to coordinate because I knew I wanted to have some reds or some oranges and some yellows and some blues. And so I used colors out of this at Peloton.com to get my colors out of. So that's kind of how that works. So I used this color here as one of the colors I got from there, as well as the border is from there. Now again, the background, the sky color, didn't worry myself too much with that one. Let's see what else we're going to have in here. So also on this same object, I have a text layer in which I say, okay, Ozone Defender. So all the frames that we see in there are going to have text in them. So what's empty right here is there should be a place there for the button, which we'll talk about later for how to place the button. And you're also going to have other layers in here, other levels. So if I push F6, it copies the previous keyframe. And now we can say, let's just change that 1 to a 2. And instead of Training Day, this might be Sound of Thunder. Somehow I got interested in using words from Pink Floyd songs to name my levels with, and now I have to figure out why I would do that and how that works. So Sound of Thunder can do like this, and I can center it using the Align panel. The Align panel is gone, so if I can't find it, I'm going to choose Essentials, Reset Essentials, yes, and now my Align panel is right here. So I can use this to align the stage and center that text. So level 2, I'm going to take out this notification here, and I can do another one, another F6. This will be level 3, and what should be this one called? I'm going to say this is going to be Lapse of Reason. Sometimes in battle things get a little crazy, and that's why we called it the Lapse of Reason. So every level, we're going to go up to like 10 levels, is going to have a different name, and those work through to show up every time we change the level in the game. What else is in my library? Let's have a look. Let's go back to scene 1. From Splash, back to scene 1. Nothing there. What do we have? I have the player. We already talked about the player. Now let's talk about the enemy. The enemy, if I open the enemy, I have every frame is a different enemy. So I kind of want to design as many of these as I have levels in the game. So if I have 10 levels, I need 10 of these. And what's going to happen is when it puts them in play, it's going to choose a different enemy every time it drops one in. So you're going to have multiple enemies flying around on the screen trying to get you. And the trick is to know which ones are the enemies, which ones are the good guys, or the things don't hit like a bonus object. So here's all these objects that we can design, and I've used some real basic tricks to design these with. If you are lucky enough to have preserved your work from last semester from Adobe Illustrator, that's great, but not everybody did that. So let's find some cool ways to make quick and easy designs. So if I push F7, I have this empty frame, and I need to figure out having about the same size as everything else. So there is a button in here somewhere called onion skinning. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see, let's close this. Or not. Let's see, I've got somewhere in there's the onion skinning button. I think it's one of these, maybe it's further over. Let me just collapse that side. There we go. So one of these buttons here, we go. These ones are onion skinning. So onion skin outlines or onion skin. So that shows me the previous frames all the way back as far as I want to see, even if it's just the previous one. And you can make your ships, most of them should be about the same size as your player, which is about 50 or 60 pixels square on a side. So here I'm going to go and draw something different. I'm just going to use some basic geometry. And I've used the Polystar tool a bunch for this, so opening up my properties panel, with the Polystar tool, I can choose options and say, how many sizes do I want this to be? Let's go with 4. 4 is too weird. Let's try 4. Why not? So I'm going to draw this, using about the same area. I'm going to use the Shift key. Oh, that's kind of interesting. It's not really what I was planning on doing. I was going to go this way. Oh, it doesn't want to go that. Okay. So I'm going to go about that size. It's a terrible color for a spaceship. All the designers would laugh at me if I did that. So all the spaceship designers. So I'm going to put this way, match it on the top of my shape there. So using this, here's my properties of the shape. Let me change the color to something like a gray spaceship. And now I've got a stroke along the outside. So I can now take some of these shapes and move these around. So let's just take this one and move it straight down. Something like this. And there, now I've got a 7th player in there. Now the way that this gets activated into having multiple enemies we'll get into when we get into the deeper level of programming. We're going to have a different tutorial for every stage of design. So what else do we have to have? Player, score BG. My score BG is simply a rectangle of almost indiscriminate size, could be almost any size, and I made it a square, and I put the centering point at the top right. Now where you put your centering point is based on where your scoreboard is going to go in your game, and you want to think through, where should I put this? How is it going to go? And if your scoreboard goes along the top of your game, then you'd want to put your registration point at the top left of the object. The goal there is to avoid code. So I put that there because then I can just say, okay, the X of this object, if I play this again, the X of that piece is going to be stage.stage width, so it's off to the right, and the height is stage.stage height. And I didn't have to use a stage.stage height or a Y for positioning it because it's at Y is 0. And that's because the registration point is right here. So based on that, how do I avoid writing more code? If you're going to put your scoreboard across the bottom, think that through. You probably want to put your registration point at bottom left if you were putting your scoreboard across the bottom. So all these design issues, you're thinking through that stuff. What else do I have in here? I've got a shot E. This is the enemy shot, and I have shot P. That's my shot, the player shot. And those are very small pieces of graphics. If I select this and inspect it in the properties panel, I notice it's like not even 4 pixels wide and maybe 16 pixels tall. So that's pretty small, but it's going to show, again, that's how that looks. There's my shots. So that's about how big they need to be visible. You can make them a little bit smaller if you want. Don't make them too much bigger. So those are the pieces you're going to use. Make sure each of them is a symbol of its own with the linkage property properly set up. So again, important things: splash, which has multiple frames, shot P, shot E. You could have them both be the same shot, doesn't really matter. Score BG, player, and enemy. Now don't worry about these font things, but you do need a go button. Now the go button here, I designed this with an up and over and a down and a hit. It's a button symbol, and its linkage is called go button with a capital G. So how this works is I've got the up, the over, the down, and the hit. Now the over and the down both use the same background piece, which is this funky thing I made called button blinky. And button blinky simply uses a tween. Make this however you want. Lots of choices, lots of opportunities to try your design skills. Okay. And so what this does is it fades between this and this. It does this by having keyframes. It has an object in there. So my properties for the object is, let's see, that's button blinky, I think. Yeah, it is button blinky. And so the shape that's in there is it's actually a copy of my my score background. So I use that to drop it in there, and I use a couple of different keyframes or tweens to set the color value. So there's a color value in here somewhere. Where is it? Color values, color effect, color effect. So if I click on here or here and select the object, the color effect for the object is set to alpha, and I dragged it down to 19%. So with the object selected at that keyframe, I reduced the alpha, made it more transparent. So as it goes through, then I added a classic tween. So it says remove classic tween. You can add a classic tween, and the classic tween allows us to sort of have a transition between those color properties for alpha, and it just kind of makes it fade back and forth. Let's see what the results of that are. So I got there the button. As you point to it, it fades in and out, trying to get your attention. Notice also, because it is a button, that it shows a finger. It's the pointer finger, not the middle one, and it's pointing to say, hey, this is a button. Do you want to click it? So nothing. Hey, it's a button. Do you want to click it? Nothing. Hey, yeah, you get the point. So as we click that, it tells us where to click. And again, here's our game. And recall, of course, that this score BG object was originally about 100 pixels square, just kind of random, and that's the same piece I used to make my button blinky background. So it had to be a symbol in order to make that work. So let's go check this out. So inspecting the object, it says instance name, it's a movie clip instance of score BG. So I did that, so I'd use one thing to make the thing over and over again as I saw fit. Alright, next thing you're going to learn how to do is set it up so that you have just the bare basic infrastructure of these screens. But first, you have to make that part work. We're going to start off by making that part first.